Welcome back to our webinar series. We are really glad to be back with you, and we're excited to continue with you together in this work. As always, I'm joined by Jeanna Capito. As you enter the room, we're going to go ahead and start getting started. Feel free to place your name and location in the chat box, and we'll go to the next slide and take a quick look at the agenda for today. All right, as we take a look at the agenda, we are going to discuss, as promised, the importance of wellness, educator wellness in home-based childcare systems, especially those that are focused on equitable systems. We're going to take a look at a couple of ways that we can support wellness and see how it is being implemented, and then we'll talk about next steps. So we're going to welcome today Shayla Collins, Dr. Juliet Bromer, Carla Burton, and then we'll close out our session again with Shayla Collins and take a moment to get us started in our session today and kind of get us in the mindset. We're gonna launch a poll. Let's see, let me get to the right one. We're gonna kind of take a temperature check of self-care and how we feel and approach self-care. So if you get a chance to go ahead and, how do you see self-care in your life and your work-life balance? As the results are coming in, I am going to turn it over to Jeanna to remind us of our core beliefs that we start every session with, and then we'll take a quick look at the self-care poll and see where we land. Jeanna?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so thrilled to be sharing this deeper dive into educator wellness with you all, particularly bringing in my colleague Shayla Collins, who has done years now of support for home visiting and family support professionals around the idea of not just their own wellness, but how they share some of these techniques with the children and families they serve. So hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that same spirit of how do we transfer some of what Shayla helps us all experience to then the families and staff that we work with. As Danielle mentioned, I'm going to talk just quickly about our core beliefs. So we can go ahead to the next slide. In particular, at today's webinar, since we are thinking about wellness, there's certainly an element of cutting across all of these core beliefs. But one of the ones that I think jumps out for me the most as far as them is the idea of, number one, family, friend, and neighbor, family childcare, home-based care providers as being part of the fabric of the mixed delivery system. So we need to ensure that we have strong providers and educators in these home-based settings in order to be able to deliver early care and education to children and families. And we also talk a lot about the importance of ensuring that the strategies and components and approach to the work within our systems is resourced on par and thought about in the same way that we think about center and school-based settings. And I think that this is a particularly important area that when you're on your own, when you run your own business, run your own family childcare home, you are pretty autonomous and also can be pretty isolated. And I don't think we often think about how is wellness supported in these settings and how do we ensure that they are part of a community that receives and gives support to each other. And so I think about number two as being an important piece for this as well. Let's go ahead to the next slide. You already heard me do it, moving in and out of terms. We always highlight and want to just highlight this again, that as part of this national support for home-based childcare, we intentionally use the whole mix of terms that you hear individuals refer to themselves as. We have family childcare home providers that refer to themselves as owners, educators, providers, practitioners. We also know that within different state systems, terms are used differently. What licensed or registered or unlicensed means in one state might not mean the same thing in another state. We use these terms interchangeably intentionally because we want you all sort of to hear your system, hear your community in the terms that we use, but we also want to acknowledge that we are encompassing all of these types of settings. We are not saying that this support, the conversations that we have at these national webinars are only for licensed family childcare homes that meet a certain criteria. That is not the approach that we use to our work. Instead, we are casting a much wider tent to who is engaged in this support. And we're really thinking about individuals that are providing care for children in that home-based setting. So it's very intentionally that we move out in and out of the term. So we always like to have a moment where together we do reflect on that and acknowledge that regarding the terminology, and that what you're familiar with might not be the same as a colleague across the country and what their terms are, but that we are all thinking about the same types of individuals providing care to young children. All right.
Jeanna, before we turn it over to Shayla, let me pop the results up really quick. So it's encouraging that so many do prioritize self-care and have a good work-life balance, but I can see, yeah, we're going to turn it over to Shayla, who will support us more, and for those of us that may struggle a bit.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I am Shayla, and I am so happy to be here with you all. And before I continue, I want to shout out my first daycare provider, Miss Pam, from 85 to 90, who helped shape who I am today. And that's the same thing that y'all are doing for all these other babies and their families. And secondly, that poll was so apropos. I need y'all to understand that when y'all engage with me, it's going to be reciprocal, because so many of y'all look like y'all got this down according to the poll. Just know that I need your help. Okay, we're in this together. And so what we're going to do a little bit at the beginning of this, and then I'll have something at the end to bookend it, is talk about the real life ways that we can take care of ourselves a little bit better. My example is when I first got into mindfulness, I was like, what is this? Okay, what are you talking about, right? And so as I got deeper into it and learned more about it, I tried to think of ways that I can incorporate it into my real life in a way that resonates with me. So please know that when you're engaging in mindfulness practices, make sure that you're engaging in them with a way that resonates with you and that you're customizing it to fit your daily life, okay? And so the first thing I want to talk about a little bit is setting the tone. Okay, setting the tone for how we engage with our mindfulness. And our mindfulness means being in the present moment, right? Acknowledging how we feel, acknowledging what is going on around us, and doing so without judgment. And one of the quotes that has always, not always, but more in the last few years, been so prevalent in my life is a quote by a gentleman named Robert Holden. And I'm going to say it twice in case some of y'all are like me and want to write things down, because my grandma raised me. If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Okay. And so the quote that resonates with me when I'm thinking about what I want my mindfulness to be in my life, it says, your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. And that is so important in the work that we do, because we're engaging with others all the time. We loving on them, we're compassionate, we're talking to them, and we're modeling, right? But we can only do that at our highest and best level when we're able to actually know what our relationship is to ourselves and take some time to engage in that. And so right now, what we're going to do is a practice. And this is one of my favorite practices that was introduced to me by a colleague, and it's called the 3 centers check. The 3 centers check. It can be done personally by yourself, or it could be done to engage with other colleagues or as such an icebreaker on a meeting, just to get the temperature of how everybody is showing up. And so that's what we're going to do right now with each other. And so I invite you to get into a position that's comfortable for you in whatever space you're in. Just take a moment to notice how you're feeling. You can close your eyes, lower your gaze, keep them open, whatever makes you the most comfortable. I'm going to ask you about your 3 centers, which are your mind, your heart, and your body. Your mind, your heart, and your body. How is your mind feeling right now? Lots of thoughts swirling around. Maybe you're thinking about one particular thing. How's that feeling for you? Just take a moment. How is your heart right now? Is it warm? Is it heavy? Is it beating fast? Just taking that temperature a little bit. And how's your body? How you feeling today? What's going on? My go-to word is usually hungry. So now that you've had a moment or two, I'm going to ask you to think of one word that describes each of your centers. One word to describe your mind, one word to describe your heart, and one word to describe your body. Okay? And don't worry if it's the same word, okay? But tell us one word to describe each center. And the overall question is, how are you showing up today? How are you showing up in this space? And when you get your word, if you'll indulge me, because I'm nosy or inquisitive in academia, by all means, throw your words in the chat. Let's see how we're all showing up here today. How we feeling? Okay. Okay, mind racing, heart hopeful, body healing. Right on. Right on. That hopeful piece. Woo-hoo. Got to hold on to that. Gratitude, content, and tired. Clearing, appreciative, tired, engaged, content, relaxed, vibrant, thankful, and peaceful. Come on now. Come on. I need that peaceful feeling, okay? Busy, content, and tired. Y'all see that thread of tired on the body? Y'all see that common humanity, that commonality, how we showing up to this space, okay? Focused, tight, and warm. What I love about the fact that we're sharing this with each other, like I said, in a meeting space, in a conference space, when I see things like that, that allows me to see where everybody's coming from and adjust where I'm coming from, right? If I have a 10,000 page PowerPoint and everybody tell me they're tired, they're scattered, they're overwhelmed, they're busy, they're full, they're tense and all that, I might give you 2 slides. We're just gonna hit the top ones, you know what I mean? So it allows you to be able to know where others are coming from, to make adjustments, but also when you know where you're coming from, you know how you're showing up, being able to address those unmet needs that we'll discuss further down the line. Okay. This is beautiful. Thank you all. Thank you all for sharing all of this with me. But again, I just want to end it and make sure we have enough space because I got something else on the end as well. Please do an internal check of how you're showing up. Okay. What I've learned is that very few people listen to what I say, except on here, but I'm talking about in my real life. But they very, very, very much watch every move that I make. And particularly when we're engaging with younger folks, I have children, I have stepchildren, nieces and nephews. They don't listen to a word I say, but they watch every move that I make. So one of the most important questions that I've learned to ask myself, knowing that it's going to look different most of the time that I ask myself, is how am I showing up? How am I presenting myself? And am I presenting myself in a way that I'm being who I needed when I was a kid in that very moment. And sometimes I don't like my answer. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to engage. Be gentle to yourself. Take care of yourself and get what you need. And I look forward to continuing to learn alongside of you and in front of you, because mine is recorded. Thank you very much. I'll pass it back to our beautiful Build crew and see you at the end.
Thank you so much for modeling that, for walking us through that activity. And we'll continue to discuss some of these activities in the upcoming sessions and how we can apply them in our daily life, in our life with our colleagues, and the family and children that we have the pleasure to serve. Now we're going to turn it over to Dr. Juliet Bromer, who's going to share with us some of the science behind the benchmarks and why and indicators of why wellness is important from a scientific aspect, and how it's built into some benchmarks that have been developed. Dr. Bromer?
Thanks, Danielle. And thank you, Shayla, for giving us space on a webinar to just be, and really appreciate that. So thank you. And I feel like now I'm just gonna like break that beautiful space by throwing slides at you all. But hi, I'm Juliet, and I'm a researcher at the Erikson Institute in Chicago, where I direct the Home-Based Childcare Research Initiative, and I'm involved in leading several national and multi-state projects on quality and sustainability of home-based childcare. One of our projects is a collaboration with Homegrown, which is a funding collaborative focused on home-based childcare. In this collaboration, we are developing research-informed tools for the field around the implementation of home-based childcare networks that support home-based childcare educators, families, and children. So networks, and you may have heard them referred to as sort of thinking about Jeanna's talk about terminology, lots of terminology here in the field. So some people call these staffed family childcare networks, but in our work with Homegrown, we're calling them home-based childcare networks to take that broad, sort of cast a broad view of organizations that support home-based childcare. Networks have been a proposed and actual strategy for supporting quality in home-based childcare for many years. And the benchmarks that I'm going to share with you today are a starting point for articulating high quality and equitable network operations and services. So before I tell you about the networks, I just want to emphasize that when we think about, we talk about quality of care for children and families, but we can also talk about quality of support. What does good support look like? And what does good service delivery that supports providers look like? And one thing we know about supporting home-based childcare is that the provider, and I'm going to say herself, and I know it's not always women, but the provider herself is at the heart of quality. And we really cannot ignore the provider when we talk about supporting quality in home-based childcare. So if the provider is not well and healthy, then we can't expect providers to deliver high-quality care and education to children and families. And so I really think at the heart of high-quality support is this question of well-being. Which is so important. And we need to start with the provider. Then we can think about how the provider can impact the lives of children and families. But if the heart of the home is not healthy, that we really can't expect to get to those outcomes that we want. So I'm going to give you an overview of the benchmarks that we've developed for home-based childcare networks. There really have not been any kinds of benchmarks or guidelines for what is a high-quality support entity for home-based childcare. And so this is a start. It's not the be-all and end-all, it's just a start. And I'm going to specifically focus on some of the benchmarks related to well-being, and then share some hot-off-the-press data that we have on the benchmarks. Next slide, please. Actually, no, keep it there. Sorry, keep that slide. Yeah. So there are a total of 11 benchmarks. And each benchmark articulates a broad area of quality support. And they're grouped into 3 broad categories: the why, the what, and the how. The why benchmarks relate to an organization's mission and culture with an intentional focus on home-based childcare, engaging providers as equal partners, and a focus on equity. The what benchmarks address the services and the specific supports that are offered. And this is where we're going to be talking about well-being. And then the how benchmarks really relate to how services are delivered and implemented, how data are used, what are the staffing approaches, how are providers recruited, et cetera. Okay, next slide. So we talk about well-being in the benchmarks in 2 ways. Psychological and physical well-being of providers, supporting that, and then supporting the economic and financial well-being of providers. I think we don't spend enough time on the economic well-being, right? Because it's not just about how you're feeling today, but like, if you're, are you able to feed your family and keep a roof over your head is directly going to impact how you're feeling today. So this is benchmark D, and I think there's a link in the chat too, if you really want to dig in and look at the networks. There's a link to the publication, but I'm just pulling out the 2 benchmarks that focus on well-being. This one talks about how networks offer services that promote well-being and attachment to home-based childcare work. It talks about offering services that support psychological and physical well-being, reducing stress from the difficult working conditions that some providers experience, helping folks improve their work-life balance, promoting educational advancement and lifelong learning, which is part of well-being, and opportunities for advancement. But also a network needs to respect and hold and understand and nurture those who may not be ready yet, and that's okay. And so these different ways that networks might support the sort of psychological well-being of providers. The next benchmark, next slide, focuses on this economic well-being and sustainability. So here we think about how can networks facilitate providers' access to benefits, paid time off, vacation, healthcare, retirement, right? These are things we know many educators and providers do not have access to. And so what role can a network play in facilitating access to these things that are directly related to economic well-being and to psychological well-being as well? We also talk in the benchmarks about how networks can help providers maintain full enrollment. So to ensure they have a steady income and a reliable income, and they're not worrying week to week, are they going to get paid? So that's just a little peek into the benchmarks. I encourage you to take a look at the document and read through them. There's also lots of examples under these of what we mean by these benchmarks and indicators. So now I'm going to just pivot and share with you really briefly some hot off the press survey results. So we fielded a survey. We put these benchmarks out, and then we said, well, we really want to understand, what does it look like out there? How are networks doing? Are they enacting these benchmarks? What does it look like? So we fielded a survey this fall. Our sample included 51 networks across 24 states, variety of types of networks. Remember, we're very broad in our definition. So these included larger organizations that had a program that supports home-based childcare, also included standalone networks, also included family childcare run associations like the one DeCarla runs. So we had a whole range of organizations. Next slide. And what we found was, first, the good news. The good news is that nearly all networks report that they support provider well-being through focusing on stress reduction and management. They do this through training workshops, through coaching and visits to homes, through peer support or facilitated peer support groups. And so that's the good news, that there is an interest and understanding that well-being of providers is important. Next slide. But we also learned that far fewer networks in our sample focus on economic well-being. So very few help providers access paid time off or vacation or sick time or health insurance or retirement savings. So there's really, I think the takeaway here is that there are many strengths to build on because networks and organizations that are working with providers realize the importance of provider well-being, but there's a lot of room to innovate, right? A lot of ways that networks can help advocate for support for these kinds of supports, and perhaps more concrete ways they could actually help to provide these supports. And I meant to say at the beginning that all of the information about the networks is available in the link that's in the chat, but these slides on data, since these are new data, they're not even published yet, and I was excited to share them with you today, but I'm asking not to have them shared yet. We will have a public report out in the next few months. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet, for sharing that hot off the presses information. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to that report and help distribute that when it's ready to the audience. So thank you so much. If we can go to the next slide, before we invite Carla to show us and tell us about her association and all they've done pre-pandemic through today in supporting their educators, I wanted to just get a sense, another temperature check of what you're currently doing where you are. So let me launch that poll and see if any of these resonate. You should be able to choose as many as are applicable. And if you are so moved, please feel free to share in the chat. We'd love to be collecting examples, lift those up either on these calls, in blogs, at other, unfortunately, sometimes technology, it's only letting you choose one. But feel free to put that information in the chat as well, or follow up with us after. So let me go ahead and end the poll and just kind of share that out really quickly. So a little bit of everything, which is great to see. It's really exciting. So again, please feel free to share with us and we'll make sure that we get it out to all of your colleagues. But now I'd like to go to the next slide, and I'm going to invite Carla Burton to share with us how Supporting Professional Network Association supports wellness. And we're going to ask Carla, can you please introduce yourself and to those that may not know you, and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing prior to the pandemic, during, and then how things look now.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for having me this afternoon. I am super excited to be here because I think that self-care is so very important for family child care educators and all of us, especially after coming from up under the pandemic, the COVID. And first of all, I am founder of Supporting Professionals Network Association. And because of the pandemic, we have begun to reach out to educators that we weren't able to reach before because of all of our virtual meetings now. So that turned out to work out. So we're able to attract and be a platform for those that may feel isolated, otherwise that may not have a strong network in their community. Let's see. You can turn the slide and then I can begin to share some of the ways pre-pandemic that we reached out to our network decided to reach out. If you look to the left, that is actually our only and first self-care event that we put together because we were beginning to hear our educators saying things like, oh, I've been ill, I need to eat healthy. What are some other things that I can do to relax because of my busy schedule? So we put our resources together because we are not funded by state agencies or any other, unfortunately, organizations, but we do some fundraising, small fundraising, and then we let our dues carry us to be able to offer some things for ourselves that we feel we need. And if you look to the left, this was an event that we held in the community. We had a holistic person come out with some mindfulness, and she began to tap into some breathing techniques that we needed. I remember my colleague and I meeting at her home as we practiced some of these techniques to create a video at the time, so that the family child care educators can actually practice on their own time. We had a vendor that came in with some sugarless or sugar-free wines that we could look at, because, you know, diabetes can be something that we find ourselves battling because of the high sugar content in alcohol. So we thought, well, let's look at some wines that may not have as much sugar content. So we were able to sample some and then order some if we liked it. We had a chef to come in to show some seasonings and other ways that we could flavor our foods without salt intake and some of the others. But the best part was using our local family child care educators and their families to come in with their businesses, where they shared their entrepreneur other hats that they wear, and they brought in some things that they thought would make, most of us were women there, to make us feel special and pretty, as we looked at scarves and hats, and we even had vendors to do massages. They brought in their chairs, stones, healing stones for those that feel that stones can attract you and calm you. And then I did a workshop because in my journey, personal journey, I had to find a place that I could escape in between breaks, working from the home, attending meetings, which has actually went skyrocketed since COVID, because we have all the Zoom meetings, you know, so you can go 4 or 5 meetings if you're not careful. But anyway, so I found a place in my attic that I cleaned up pictures, fountains, and really made it my own space. So I was able to share some things that I did, hoping that our educators can find a spot, whatever that looks like, that they could escape to. And so we had a wonderful time, and we would love to go back and have something similar. But let me quickly go on. Before our pre-demic event that we had, and I think that was right before COVID, the year right before we were, you know, it fell on our heads. Before that, we had did 10 years straight of award ceremony. And it happened around the holiday, Christmas. It happened around that time. But it was really launched to bring family child care educators out of their scrubs. We go for the day to get dressed up, our hair, our nails done, and then celebrate the work we did by asking other sponsors like Action for Children, NAFCC, others to put ads in our ad book as a fundraiser. We had a silent auction that some of our educators put together. We invited our parents, our families, our friends, our spouses, and then we sat back for a beautiful dinner where we danced the night away, and then presented awards to, maybe we selected, I think each year, 2 exemplary family child care educators that go beyond the duty. That means that not only do they run a business in their home, but they do things in the community to lift other people up and make their lives easier, or intervene when they're having trouble and help others feel better about their circumstances. And then there was one more award we gave. We searched high and low for a community partner that we felt made a difference in the lives of children and family. That may be a sickle cell, a homeless shelter, a minister that fought violence in the community. And so our 10th year, we actually lifted up and celebrated the men in the community. So that was some of the things we did before COVID. You can turn the slide. In person, okay, so now COVID has hit. Everyone's scrambling around to figure out how to tie up the loose ends, because we find that all of a sudden family child care mattered. You know why? because CPS was closing schools. Parents were looking for programs that still remain open and that were smaller so that they could send their kids, especially for the e-learning. And so through an association, we were able to collaborate, network, because we had no idea what e-learning would look like in our homes. And we came together, which is called a power hour chat, which is simply a Zoom 1-hour meeting where we collaborate. Those that found success in some of the things they discovered would share with those of us that weren't so successful. And then together we would strategize on how to make it work so that families could have a place to bring their children until the other agencies figured it out. That was one wonderful thing. And then we decided to create some group chats because we needed to stay connected as an organization in real time. Let me tell you the 3 group chats that were developed. There was one group chat through the phone, through our phone group chat that was called SPNA members. And that is all of them are important, but that is the more serious chat that I could go to my phone right now and there may be some information there. So we check it on grants, trainings, anything that we think, bills that are passed on in the child care network that we think we should know about. So those are important things that people find out and send through the group chat. And then we have what's called good and welfare. Well, let me back up before I tell you about that one. We have what's called a referral. So if I'm full, I will put the parent's request in the group chat. If an educator can help that family, they will say, I will call. There may be several educators that say, I will call. And if it's a match, then they will let us know. And that is our way to network and make sure that, as you saw in previous slides, that we stay connected and that we support our families through our network. And then here's the third one. I think this one is the most powerful one that has helped us through COVID because it's called the good and welfare. Now, the good and welfare chat has many different goals. It originally started to celebrate anyone's birthdays, accomplishments with Accelerate, or maybe going back to school, or even anniversaries if they want to put that in. So it was just to say, congratulations, we're with you. Some of our educators got special awards in the community that they wanted to share. So that was great. But then it began to evolve to self-care. And what I mean by that is, first you would greet, they may put a positive message for the day. I noticed it started there. Have a wonderful day, take care of yourself. Then there were some educators that were really strong in the mindfulness, the body, the healthy recipes and juicing, and they begin to share recipes. And other people begin to check them out and try it and give 2 thumbs up if they liked it. January 1st, it evolved even further, where we had an educator that wanted to lose weight. And she began to put in the chat, meet me at 5 in the morning, and I have a link here and we can exercise together. We have some yoga, they would transfer to just some steps or maybe a kickboxing one, whatever you thought that you wanted to keep up with, you had a team that would work out with you. And those like myself who couldn't get up at 5 because I'm sorry, I was up at 5, but I had to be dressed to receive a family not long after that. I just took the same link and did it in my time when I could squeeze it in. And then we would share and encourage each other. So that's just some of the ways that we continue to connect and use our chats to be able to pull people along. And yeah, there it is, juicing, yoga, and meditation. Now, let me tell you about the meditation. I told you the seed was planted years ago before COVID. That is a journey that I have been personally on, and I knew how important it was just by partnering with the young lady who did the workshop. So I constantly dib and dab and research and do my own practice in my time and then try to make it to yoga classes. I began to think about my children. I looked around and saw that some of them needed some ways to de-stress, especially with the trauma that you see in everyday life. You know, you have busy parents that when they drop their children off, all I see is the phone, but nobody is tuning in to the child because it's just busy all the time. So I noticed some behaviors that I didn't quite like, and I'm thinking, if it works for me, it's got to work for the children. So I have found a secret. I have developed a couple of trainings that really show educators on how to begin the practice from the beginning to the end. And I have several. We have a kindness meditation and yoga. We have a sun salutation one. You can shorten it or you can make it as long as you like. So once I found something that was working for my children, then we begin to offer it to other educators in our group. And now they are doing it too. And everybody then begins to adapt it and fix it according to their programs. So it's not like one size fits all. You take the pieces that you want to create to make your own different mindfulness and exercises that will relate to your children. So if you can just turn, I think I'm toward the last slide. And so this here is what you're going to see is our small group. I take small group until the children are comfortable doing it because we have all kinds of learners. And if you see the little guy with the little haircut in the blue, there was a time he could not sit still. He could not listen to the instruction of beginning the mindfulness program. So this is just us calming down after we did a few poses. And now we're going to do part one has 2 of the breathing techniques, and I think this one might have 3 of them. And so let's see what it looks like. This is the first one. So it only has 2. So you can kind of see. Let's go from here. We will begin our breathing today. We'll begin our breathing practice. Are you ready? Yeah. Oh, what happened? Okay, back straight. We'll start with our regular breaths, Mason. Okay. When I ring the bell, we'll breathe as long as we hear our sound, okay? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Good job. Inhale. Inhale. Exhale. I don't hear the gong anymore. It is time for our second breath. We will do baby bear breath. Okay, here we go. Let's get ready. I don't hear the gong anymore. So the final piece to that, I don't know if you saw the little candles, that is their favorite one. So what they get to do, I picked those up at the dollar store, and they get to flick the light on themselves, and that makes them feel all grown up. And then you notice each one is next to the child. They'll pick it up, we'll hold it, and we'll do our candle breaths. So we breathe in, and then they blow on the candle. And they breathe in and blow on the candle. We do that like 4 times. I think the best part is the final step that you will see. We have some kind of energy, whether it's an energy ring, an energy ball, but the latest one we've been using is a beautiful crystal marble. We roll it in our hand, and I say, namaste. The light in me sees the light in you. I pass it to the next child. They do the same thing until it goes around the circle. And then we have passed our positive love to each one of our people in the circle. And now we are ready to try to keep that same, right? That same feeling as we move throughout our day. And that's how we end that portion of it. So you see, it not only works for educators, as Shayla showed us this morning, we can even bring it down to our young population, our children, and begin to teach them these strategies. And hopefully they won't have to wait until they get as old as I am to try to discover how to be calm. One other quick thing I wanted to share, I had a little student that told me last year, he said his mom was honking the horn and cursing at people that got in her way in the morning. And he said, Mom, stop it and just breathe. So she got a kick out of that. I think that's it for me. That was my last slide.
Thank you for filling our cups. And I think that comment really captures it. And watching this come full circle, and our intention in providing what we anticipate as a series in the coming months is to continue to have Shayla help model for us so that we can model for those that we engage with wherever we sit, and they can model to the children that they work with and the families that they work with. So, DeCarlo, we can do just that. We can have children that know this from the beginning, and what a better world we will have. So thank you so much. We will be sharing the link that DeCarlo shared and some other links for wellness platforms as well that are either free or low cost when we send out the resources out, so we can all kind of continue to keep this on our radar between now and our next time together. But right now, we'd like to invite Shayla back to close us out in this part of our journey together today. And then we'll come back with just a couple of reminders before we end the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I begin, let me first stop and pay homage to Mr. Carla and Ms. Juliet for what you have shared. Understanding that mindfulness and its meditation is only a piece of what helps us continue in our self-care journey. I love how you brought up the food, Mr. Carla, the special space you got set up, the stones, and Ms. Juliet, how you did not allow us to forget about our financial well-being. Okay, ain't gonna act like that ain't a part of it. And knowing that what I'm sharing is just a piece of a very, very, very large puzzle that you can begin to build for yourself or enhance what you've already built. And so the skills that I'm going to share with you all right now, it's an activity called the 3 Ps. I have changed it to the 4 Ps. And the 4th P being practice, because everything that we're engaging with takes practice. And what I've learned is that that it's much easier to practice these skills before we need to use them. You understand what I'm saying? Not in the moment when that pressure is on. And so this activity is normally used in a more stressful situation, but I'm hoping with us running through it in a group right now and thinking about a time in our life or that we could have used it will help us be able to begin to put that 4th P into play, which is practice. And so our first P is the pause. That is the most important P for me in my life in the transition that I've been through, because I didn't even know pausing existed anywhere other than a VCR. Now y'all know how old I am because I said VCR, not DVD, not Blu-ray, okay? I didn't know that when something or somebody was coming at you, that you had the choice or the opportunity to decide how you were going to handle it. I was just doing another P. I was popping off, right? And so the first P is that we're going to pause. And that could be as short as stopping just to take a breath, just to take a moment and notice how you feel. The next P is be present, which is tuning into ourselves and what is happening for us in this very moment when we're a little bit more elevated, right? Checking in to see what kind of thoughts we're having, what kind of feelings, what kind of emotions, right? And bodily sensations. I know when I'm a little bit elevated, my hands get kind of clammy. You know what I mean? Starting to begin to recognize what you feel when things are unsettled within yourselves. And when you're doing so, making sure it's done without judgment, okay? And then proceed. Proceed is what is the most effective way to move through or engage in this situation. Do you respond? Do you react? Or is it do nothing? And of course, responding is doing it in a way where you're in control, where you're able to do what needs to be done. Reacting is where you got to flip out. And I'm not telling you sometimes that's not necessary. I don't want to make it sound like mindfulness is always quiet. Okay, we're not going to be lying. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And then there's other times in a situation that it doesn't even deserve your energy. Okay, that self-care piece would be not even engaging in something that it doesn't even need your engagement. And that part to me has taken the most practice, is learning to discern what I needed to be involved in and what none of my business. Y'all understand? Okay. And so what we're going to do in this exercise is just take a moment to reflect in your life when using these skills. The pause, be present, proceed, and practice could have been useful. And so I'm going to ask you to get yourself in the most comfortable position you can. Comfort is very important when you're rolling with me. I don't want you uncomfortable. Wear your elastic and everything else, okay? And I'd like you to think of an exchange or an instance in the past week or so, maybe the past month, where pausing before you responded to someone or a situation could have improved the outcome. Where had you paused before you made that decision, it could have improved the outcome. Now, in this very moment, imagine yourself in that same situation, but pause right now in this moment and take 2 or 3 slow breaths. Tune into how you feel right now, remembering this situation. What thoughts come up for you? Are there any emotions that bubbled up? Do you feel any sensations in your body? Now think about how you can proceed, asking yourself, what is most effective? What is most effective? Sometimes there's more than one way that you could do this, but what is most effective? I'm going to ask you to take a few breaths right now and notice what feelings came up for you. Thank you all for doing this practice with me. By all means, feel free to put in the chat if you noticed anything that came up for you or anything you would have done differently. Now, you don't have to tell your business and tell the situation. But if you noticed that taking that pause may have changed the outcome. We are all on this journey together. Again, I look forward to the reciprocal wisdom of these ongoing calls. And I appreciate you all today, and especially the other presenters. You bless me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shayla, for setting the tone at the beginning and for closing us out, and just getting us to pause for a moment. It is so important. And I hope to take that's my goal for the week, to take that pause through the rest of my activities this week, whatever they are. We do want to thank all of the presenters today, and we are so excited to have Shayla continue this journey with us in the coming months as we continue to explore why wellness is so important for systems to address for their educators' well-being, for retaining their workforce, and for overcoming challenging situations that home-based childcare educators face every day. So thank you so much. We do want to remind everyone that the Build Conference early bird registration is available through Friday for those that are looking to attend the conference in July in Anaheim. We have a pretty vigorous home-based childcare track and sessions that will be available, and so we'll work in the coming week with the email and resources to share what those look like with you. And we just want to thank everyone once again, and we will send those out. And DeCarla, if you can share with us what you tell the children to close us out, that would be wonderful.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'd be honored. We can just start with just bringing some warm energy to our hands as we rub our hands. And we can end it with saying, Namaste, the light in me sees the light in you. And then just give yourselves a hug. Thank you, guys.